Good evening, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order this June 5th, 2023 Borough Council meeting order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, or Sally, would you please call the roll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Kliskevich,
I am here.
Mr. Lister's on the phone. Ms. Lloyd?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Seitz?
Here.
Ms. Willenbecker?
Here.
Mr. Reddinger?
Here. At this time, I would like to report on our May 2nd executive session. We discussed personnel and potential litigation. No action was taken. We are going to move the presentation for Officer Schmidt until the mayor arrives. We now will go into the presentation from Shiny Shell and Coldwater.
I want to check with you guys. I know it's been a couple of times we've been here. Obviously, you want us to kind of go through the Shiny Shell car wash again for the members who haven't maybe heard it the first time. Would that be?
Have you heard it?
Could-
I guess you haven't heard the.
Could you tip the mic up closer maybe, or is it on?
Is that too tall? That's the problem.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys want to hear about the car wash the second time, or do you just want to go into what we're here for as far as the?
I think everybody, I don't know.
We're good?
Yeah.
You guys okay? So again, my name is Chris Coons. I'm with Pannoni Associates, and this is Brian Prince. He's with Coldwater Capital, and we are coming here, as you guys have seen now, for the request of the zoning amendment to the both map as well as a zoning amendment to permitted use in the commercial shopping. Yeah, C1 commercial shopping zone. The plan you have up there right now is the proposed sketch of what we're looking to do at the site that is located at. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
475 East Main Street is the address.
As we talked before, this site is 4 individual lots currently. 2 of them are zoned commercial C1, the other 2 are zoned residential. And we'd like to convert those 2 residential lots into C1, combine this all into one lot, and then build this car wash on that site. We have sent the text amendment to Mr. Diamond for his review, which had been worked on over the last week, and kind of got that information back from him. And wanted to see if you guys had any questions, open up for your discussion of any questions you have for us, but we'd like to try and move forward with having this be approved to get a amendment to both the
Yeah,
tax
so
and the
the
text.
one open issue I think we had was the noise issue. So, and I know this is kind of a difficult one, and I think you guys did a great job of putting together standards like we had asked. But we had in first draft, it was 85, and then 5 over ambient. And then I think, we were looking at, number one, what makes sense. And, initially our reaction was greater of, and then I think you guys said lesser of, but then when I step back and think about it, the whole benchmark to ambient sort of becomes a problem, because if it were extremely low and it was a lower of, then +5 would be maybe insanely low. On the other hand, if, let's say, hypothetically, it was 80 or 85, we wouldn't really expect you guys to be running at 90. So I think what would be real helpful would be to know what your average sound is at, the approximate distance of the closest residential line here. If we kind of not have an either or, but just an absolute number from the operations as opposed to what's in the area. Because I think we were all wrestling with how do we make sense of an either or in either direction.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. So, Brian Prince with Shiny Show Car Wash. Appreciate the time tonight. And I'll answer the two questions and happy to answer any questions and have a dialogue. So the question was, what is the average decibel level at one of our car wash sites? It averages at about 70. And I think
Now, is
the
that at the building or is that at,
that is on site. That is
Okay.
on site, not next to the exit of the tunnel where the blowers are. You know, on site, we average about 70 decibel levels. And so looking at this language, the intent of the not to exceed 70, you know, it was first 85, we lowered it to 75, or 5 above ambient is for this reason. I was just there at 6:30 on site next to the residential home next door with the decibel reader. And it's kind of evening hours, peak hours for people shopping. And Main Street is great. There's traffic, but it's not a constant flow to produce a decibel level that's consistent. So a handful of cars will drive by and it'll peak up to 75 or 80 just because of the cars passing. And then when those cars pass, it dropped to below, at one point it hit 50 or 49 on my decibel reader. So there's nothing happening on the site, the car wash isn't, there's nothing there. And so looking at ambient noise today, at kind of a peak hour, you're getting down below 50. And so our concern was if we just tie it to ambient noise, and it is during, you know, right now it says, shall not exceed the greater of 75 decibel levels or 5 decibel levels above ambient noise levels during operating hours, as measured at the adjoining residential lot lines. And so,
yes, I think we're saying the opposite now. I think we're saying forget about the surrounding, you know, what's the natural background.
Yeah.
What is your operation running at, measured at the property line?
yeah. So I think it would be, we would be comfortable with 75, I think is probably where if we had to tie it to a hard number. Because it's, you know, on a Tuesday morning with low traffic, the ambient noise is going to be anywhere from 40 to 50 potentially. And so tying it to that would be, I mean, just so you can understand our concern about having a floor. But I think on average, we'd feel comfortable with a 75 decibel reading, or it could be, you know, 75, you know, or the greater of the two. I mean, if it's a busy afternoon, and you wanted it tied to that, to 5 plus.
No, so, and I guess I'm not playing this well, and this is an odd one.
Yeah.
So we'll have, in other places, I've seen scenarios like somebody's gonna put in a giant generator.
Yeah.
And the focus is, forget about the rest, if you put that out in the middle of the desert, what's that generator running at? You know, 85 decibel, whatever it is. So, obviously, you know, you shouldn't be responsible for what's the ambient sound of trucks going by or Harleys or whatever else.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're saying that, you know, we expect a number that's an absolute number that is counting everything in the world, but really something that regulatorily, if like you're now running your operation at 90,
Yeah.
if we shut it down, all of a sudden it, you know, drops down to, you know, 50, if, you know, you were okay, you know, just turn everything on for a minute, now it's dropped, so we know you're pushing it up. I think we're looking for something like that, if, you know.
Yeah, so if we wanted to simplify it and say, okay, this car wash, or for the sake of this ordinance, because it's, in theory, you're amending your code for this or a future car wash.
Right.
In theory.
Right.
75 is certainly doable here, for us. And I know that's doable because considering the size and the dimension and the layout.
Yeah, you think you're averaging 70, that gives a little.
Yeah, a little buffer.
That to me makes more, I don't think we can do that either or, either greater of or lesser of, there's just not a, you know, you're only responsible for your operations.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that because of just the reading I just took. I mean, I hit a decimal level of 75 just 30 minutes ago, staying on the side of the road and the cars passing by. So that's not a high reading, and I think, you know, we install equipment at the exit of the tunnel to dampen the noise from the blowers. The exit of the car wash will be facing Main Street.
Mhm.
It won't face towards the residential, so there's not going to be a lot of attenuation towards the residential. And then the only other noise that's produced on site, we have vacuums, self-serve vacuums. And so that is a central vac system that's produced.
It's in the building that.
It's in one location, it's not, you know,
Not
at the
equal.
specific vacuums. And that that's not a problem. I mean, that 30 feet from that, it'll be well below that 75 decibel level.
Yes, Jason, do you remember what HRG said was, I think they said 75 was. Yeah. Yes, so I think if we just had 75
Okay.
and
So-
not, no other.
So the language shall not exceed 75 dBA.
Yeah, and get rid of the or 5.
During operating
Yeah,
hours.
Correct, so from after DBA until during, if
Yeah,
we
just
strike
during
that,
operating hours.
if that, you know,
Yeah.
that makes sense to you guys, I think then we could have a motion that, see if, you know, we're willing to advertise with that difference as the ordinance. Now that was the only specific thing that I was concerned, because we had worked through not having just existing residential lots, but also adjacent to a residential zoning property line, even if it's vacant, and we've worked through all those, so at least the concerns I personally had, you guys addressed already, other than we needed to work through this one. I don't know if council, though, has any other concerns or thoughts. I think staff, I think was okay with that change.
Well, happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Can you go back to the previous screen? So, I remember one of the times that you were here, there was conversation about Cedar Avenue there.
Yes.
So what is the plan for that? Because when I look at this, it almost looks like it is gonna be closed off, but are you leaving it open? Or,
Yeah. you can jump in.
because that looks different. Well, maybe the lines are on there and I just can't see them
Yes.
from here.
So Cedar Avenue would not be closed. The right-of-way would terminate at the edge of the property. However, we would be putting a access agreement with the borough so that they could use the entrance coming in and then still go onto Cedar Avenue. That way, the borough would have the ability for doing snow removal and kind of maintaining that path through Cedar Road to get the snow out and things of that nature. And that was something we talked to Jason, kind of said, yeah, we'd work through that as we start going to the land development phase and kind of, you know, figure out where you guys exactly want it and what you need and work with the borough on that situation.
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously, those pieces would all have to go through a formal process and be, you know, really thought out. So this is really just a zoning map and text amendment. But then there would be the land development, but also if we're vacating any of the street, we have to have a hearing on that, get public comment, to vacate part of the street. And we would have to look at those things, like we have a push-off place for snow, or, you know, what's gonna work, but,
That's a great question. I know that's not the topic of tonight, but just to be super clear, the vision would be to vacate that right-of-way within the property line and replace it with an easement, so that it functionally is the same, but it becomes private. And that would allow the development and construction of the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
Do
you.
you have anything else?
No, appreciate the time. I want to thank staff. They've been wonderful to work with.
And Mr. Diamond, we'll get that revision made and get something over to you guys
that'd be great.
tomorrow so you have the final.
I think we wanna thank you guys, because I think you know, really did address, everything that we wanted to address. The presentation was, kind of what we discussed. Because our motion, I think we have kind of a shorthand version. We don't need to amend anything, but it ought to be for the zoning map and text amendments. It's both things wrapped into one ordinance when we get to that.
All right, excellent. At this time, we'll go back to the presentation of Officer Schmidt. Please come forward.
Good evening.
How we doing?
Good.
Wherever you want, Dan.
It doesn't matter.
Let's bring it in. All right. Dan's going to start off.
I'll give a little narration of what we're here for. So on Sunday, April 23rd, 2023, at 11:35 a.m., the Middletown Borough Police Department was dispatched to the American Legion in the borough for a cardiac arrest. Officer Schmidt was working for the Middletown Borough Police Department at the time in a uniformed capacity. He responded immediately to the location. When he arrived, he was presented with a 53-year-old male who was on the floor having a medical emergency. Patrolman Schmidt quickly assessed the patient, cut off his jacket and shirt, and applied the pads from an AED. The AED indicated to shock, and a shock was applied. He then administered chest compressions for several minutes until he was relieved by fire personnel. The patient was transported to the Hershey Medical Center by ambulance personnel, and he survived the cardiac arrest. I spoke with Jason Campbell, who's of South Central Ambulance, who is the ambulance service for the area, and he advised that the early defibrillation through the use of the AED was instrumental in the survival of the patient. Basically, Officer Schmidt saved his life.
Excellent.
So we're here tonight to give him a little credit for that.
Very good.
Good job.
I echo the statements of Dan, and I can't thank you enough for your efforts every day. But in this circumstance, in 2023, with the way policing is across our nation, it's really important to recognize officers going above and beyond, and really just doing your job, but you are now accountable for someone's life being saved. And so we have the certificate for you. It's a life-saving award presented to Police Officer Robert L. Schmidt for your successful effort in saving a human life, which involves selfless and heroic actions, awarded this 5th day of June, 2023, on behalf of myself, Dan, and the entire police department, as well as the borough.
Thank you.
I would like to say that it's not just for me. There was citizens there that were doing CPR when I arrived. 5 personnel, EMS, they all took over, and then doctors, nurses at the hospitals that do this every day. So this isn't just for me. If you don't know how to do CPR, I encourage everyone here to learn it. It's not a very hard thing to do when you can save a person.
And we're trying to identify one of the citizens who was helping to bring maybe them in and give them a citizen award. And
Nice.
That's something Rob's been trying to work on. So can I get a quick picture of shaking hands?
I see that, yeah. We need EMS for you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. At this time, do I have public comment on agenda items? Seeing no public comment, agenda item number 1.
First is the approval of the meeting minutes. It's a motion to approve council meeting minutes for the May 2nd, 2023 meeting as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Approved by Councilor Miller, seconded by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 2.
This is for the approval of bills. The motion to approve payment of bills as shown on the accounts payable list dated June 1st, 2023, for the period April 27, 2023 through June 1st, 2023, and to ratify approval of such bills already paid and to authorize the appropriate officials to take required action to make said payments.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 3. Electric substation.
Yeah, well, actually, gentlemen who are here from PFM,
Yep.
do you want to?
Yeah, we can go through the presentation.
Excellent.
We did make one tweak to the timeline, so I know you have these printed in front of you, but we'll just pass that around. The one on the board is not the tweaked version. So, my name is Zach Williard from PFM. I was here about a month ago, so it's
Thank
good
you.
to see everybody. With me is Pat Doherty and Erica Schmidt from my office,
Thank you
and
very
then
much.
also John Cox from Eckert Siemens. We're gonna go through the handout. We're gonna talk about a borrowing plan, okay, which is meant to fund the improvements to the electric system upgrades that you have coming. I think you've all heard about this, over the past few months. And then we're gonna talk about the timing of that, and then I'm gonna hand it over to John, and he's gonna actually talk about the ordinance, which will be available here in one of the future meetings, okay? So feel free to ask questions as we go through this, so it's helpful. There's nothing, too specific that we need from you tonight, but we are gonna talk at the end about timing, about how quickly we want this to happen, okay? So if you flip open to the first page, this is an interest rate chart. When the borough borrows money, you can borrow on a tax exempt basis, which means you get better interest rates, okay? This chart here is called the 10-year MMD, so it's a municipal index that we follow. Most people look at the 10-year treasury or the Fed funds rate. In the municipal borrowing world, we look at MMD, okay, municipal market data, and this is the 10-year index. And if you look at the middle part of the chart, you can see rates are kind of back to 20-year averages, right? We had a very, very low rate environment for a while, through COVID, which you can see on the chart, through 20 and 21, those were all-time low interest rates. The Fed funds rate, as everybody knows, has been going up. Okay, that's a short-term rate. That's an overnight rate. This is a 10-year rate. When you're going to borrow money for a project, you borrow over, 10 or 20-year period. So we're more focused on longer-term borrowing rates, which are still in pretty good shape. And what this is showing you here is that the 10-year index is about a 269 right now, which is still pretty low. Okay. Now, when you go borrow, you're not going to borrow right at a 269, but you're still going to borrow at something, probably sub 4% right now for 20-year money. So interest rates are good. That's the bottom line. They're still in good shape as far as borrowings go. All right, now if you flip to page 3, this page has a lot of numbers on it and kind of gives you a headache, but we'll go through it briefly. We don't need to go into excruciating detail. But the borrowing plan that we came up with Sally and Ken and the administration is that we're going to do a borrowing in 2023 to start the funding of the project. Okay? We're not going to know exactly how much it costs yet. We're not going to have final bids in. And you're actually going to need to come out of borough funds in order to kick off the project here in the coming months. So what this is it's a draw schedule. So if you look in column 4, it shows that you're going to have draws starting as soon as this month potentially in order to put down a down payment for the first phase of the project. Okay. So column 4 shows about the first $5 million, how that spend will happen headed into the spring of 2024. Okay, and then column 5 shows how the second phase of the project will happen, which takes you out to about September of 2025. These are estimated draws at the moment. But that's what we expect the spend down to be, and that's when column 7 shows you how the money's going to stack up over the next 2 or so years. And then, so what we do in columns 8 through 12 is we then say, okay, so you're going to spend this much money on the project. How are we going to get that money? So it's going to be a combination of a couple things. We plan on borrowing money in 2 steps, which is shown in column 8. Right now, it's showing about a little less than a $5 million borrowing this year, and then something similar next year. We won't know that amounts exactly until we get further down the road. There's going to be an electric fund contribution. Right now, we're estimating to be about $1.1 million. That's shown in column 9. There's potentially going to be a grant, which again, we're estimating at $400,000 in column 10 right now. And then column 11 shows interest earnings on the borrowed money, which when you kind of add all those up, it'll be enough to pay for the project. Now the goal as we go through this is to minimize the costs, right? Hopefully borrow at good interest rates. Hopefully you get the grant. But these things are going to kind of all play out over the next, 12 or 18 months. Okay?
Mhm.
Any questions about the draw schedule? Okay. So then the next page 4, again, another page with small numbers on, I apologize. But this shows the borrowing plan. Okay, now on this page, we actually have 2 borrowing plans, 2 options. But the thought of the administration was that we were gonna go into red with scenario 1, which is the borough cash contribution from the electric fund. Now, the goal here was to take the 2 borrowings, kick in a certain amount of cash from the electric fund, and to keep your debt service in column 10, that's your annual payment, to about $700,000, because that's what's available in the electric fund now. Okay, so you don't have to do anything to your budget in order to fit this in. So we're gonna do something like this, which is columns 1 and 2, which will kind of back into about a $700,000 payment. Right now, we're assuming that you're gonna borrow the money as a 20-year amortization. So kind of like you have a mortgage, a home mortgage that's usually 30 years. In this situation, we're gonna try to keep this to 20 years. You can go as far out as 30 years, but we don't need to do that in order to get to that $700,000 payment. Okay? The first borrowing will be as soon as July of this year. We're going to talk about the timing in a second. So we would lock in interest rates in July, and then you would have the money in the bank in August of this year. So it takes about 30 days between pricing and settlement of the borrow. Okay? And then we'll go through next year. Right now, we're estimating again in August 24 borrowing. That will likely change. It could be sooner, it could be a little bit later, just depending on how the draws go, how the project moves along, and how interest rates are doing. Right? So we'll kind of monitor all those different things, and then we'll be back to you for that second phase to give you an update and to let you know what the plan is for borrowing. All right. So I think the takeaways are we're going to borrow about $10 million in 2 steps, and we're going to keep the payment to be about $700,000. So when you look in your budget every year going forward, the payment that's going to be in there in the electric fund for this project will be that just about that $700,000. That's kind of the high level takeaway.
Okay, I'll interject real quick if you don't mind. So the down payment, when he's saying the electric fund cash, we planned in 2023 about $969 of debt service. So that amount would be the bulk of that down payment. About 136 of it would come from the electric pool cash. And then the 400,000 of grant, we don't have an answer to that yet. So we'd have to apply for the grid resilience grant, which is out right now, and hopefully would get that extra funding.
And that's why we're kind of doing this in 2 steps, is because there is still some unknowns. You need money now to get going, but we don't have all the answers yet. If you got a bigger grant, then we'll borrow less next year. If you get less grant, we'll borrow a little bit more next year. It's all going to kind of play out, again, as you get more of the facts.
And then the other thing I want to point out, if you could, Grace, could you push that up a little bit? So the 2 big variances you're going to see is that if we go with scenario 1 and put money down, which we have in our budget, that we're going to save 7 years of payments at about $5 million of interest.
Nice.
Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, the benefits of doing the upfront payment and the 20 years versus the 27.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So if you didn't kick in the cash from the electric fund, we have to stretch the debt out further. As I said, you can go as far as 30 years. We didn't need to quite do that. But when you look in column 13, in order to get the payment down to about $700,000, we had to go out, as I said, an extra 5 to 7 years, which when you add up the total debt service is $19 million versus the $14 million shown in column 10. So again, we kind of explored all the options, and this, came out to be, what we thought was the best plan to move forward.
So debt surfaces over the length of the loan is what again?
So when you look in column 10 of your handout, the total debt service, which is the principal and the interest payments, about $14.3 million. Now that's estimated; it'll change.
Okay.
But right now, that's a good
Okay.
estimated number. Thoughts, questions before we hop into timing? Good.
No, we're good. Go ahead. Timing?
So we'll jump into timing here quick, and then I'm going to turn this over to John here in a second. So when you look at the timeline, June 5th, we're here to talk about the financing plan, make sure everybody has time to think about this. So on June 20th, that was your next meeting, okay?
we're going to need to advertise an ordinance, because you're gonna have to ultimately pass a debt ordinance in order to do this, okay? So, from the timing standpoint, we can wait until the June 20th meeting, and at that meeting, you could then say, okay, Eckert, please go advertise the ordinance for our next meeting. Or, if you're comfortable, you can tell us to do that tonight. You can say, okay, PFM and Eckert, we want you to advertise so that we can come back on June 20th, and then John can have the ordinance available for you to vote on that. That'll speed up the process to the extent we want to have money in the bank sooner and be able to lock in interest rates sooner. Just leaves us a little bit more flexible if we speed it up. But if people aren't comfortable with that and you want to think about this, we can come back to that June 20th meeting. That's when you can say, okay, we're ready to go, please advertise. And then I believe July 5th was the next meeting, at least it was on the website. So you have that. So then. at the-
July 5th is a Wednesday, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so once you pass that debt ordinance, right, then we can kind of continue the process forward in order to lock in interest rates, do all the things that we need to do in order to get the money in the bank. So that is a decision for you to let us know tonight how you want to do that, if you want us to move forward tonight, or if you want to wait until June 20th.
So whatever percentage is, that's locked in for the length of the loan?
Correct. This is fixed
And
rate.
are we anticipating any bumps in interest in the next 2 weeks? You know how sometimes,
The market right now thinks that there might be a pause. The Fed meets in 2 weeks. And the thought is, but this changes every day,
I know,
that right now they think they might skip a 25 basis point rate hike. But that, again, as data comes out, it
I know you can't tell.
quickly changes. So
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
Yep.
And again, that's the overnight rate, and we're talking about longer term rates anyway. So it doesn't always directly correlate. Even if it did increase rates, it doesn't necessarily mean that these rates will just go up.
Okay.
But we know where rates are now, and as I said, they're in pretty good shape. As we stand now. The think about that for a second. The last thing I want to point at, we can come back to the timing. So page 7. So when John comes with his ordinance, and I'll hand it off to him now. As I said, we're going to borrow about $10 million. Could be a little more, could be a little less, just depending on how things shake out, right? And how bids come back. The ordinance is going to read for a maximum amount of $13 million. Okay? And so the most common question we get from councils and boards when you're passing a debt ordinance is, well, so if we're only borrowing $10 million, why does the ordinance read for 13? Right? It has to be done on a maximum basis in order to comply with state law. Again, John can tell you more about that. But by passing it for the $13 million, it allows the flexibility for the team over the next 12 to 18 months to get you exactly what you need to lock in the best interest rates. Because when you sell bonds, each maturity has its own interest rate. It's not like a home mortgage or a car loan for the whole thing. Right? So we have to go sell 20 different maturities, which all have different interest rates. This is the way to do this the most flexible way in order to get the best results. But again, keeping in mind, we know exactly what our marching orders are to get you exactly what you need, which is about $10 million right now at the best interest rates and the back end of that $700,000 payment. And this $13 million maximum ordinance allows us to do that.
And once again, because we are putting down $1.9 million out of the electric fund,
No, we're putting down 1.5 million.
1.5,
That includes 400 from a grant.
so because we are putting down 1.5 million from the electric fund, that shortened the length of the loan by 7 years, or approximately $5 million in debt services? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
And that's in conjunction with the
Good
grant
to know.
monies.
Yes, the 1.5
coupling with the
includes the
grant
400 grant monies.
Yes, yes, I understand.
And again, knowing that those numbers that we're quoting now will fluctuate, it'll be different when we get to the finish line. Could be more, could be less.
So what they were trying to do, Ellen, is based on borrowing, if we said we wanted an annual nut of $700,000 in our debt service every year, in order to get that to that number, they would have to,
Front load.
well, they would have to have something down or extend the loan further.
Right, got it.
Does anybody have any questions? Sally, I don't know what you have prepared. Do you have a timeline prepared or a motion for a timeline
I
prepared?
do have a motion.
Do you want to read it and let's just see how it shakes out?
Okay, so it's a little funky. Motion to approve PFM to move forward with preparing financing documents for option 1 or 2, so we have to pick one, for upgrades to the Spruce Street Electric Substation and to advertise ordinance 2023-1407, approving the borrowing of funds.
I would, if it was my pick, I would pick option 1.
So I think
Is that
maybe
what's
a
recommended?
motion,
Is that what's recommended?
Yeah,
that would be
yeah,
what I would recommend.
that's what the
Okay.
administration would recommend, correct.
Yeah. So we want to read that.
That's what I would do, but there's,
Okay.
you know, multiple other people here. So.
Well, we could do a motion for
Okay,
one.
read it and see how she.
Motion to approve PFM to move forward with preparing financing documents for option 1 for upgrades to the Spruce Street Electric Substation and to advertise ordinance 2023-1407, approving the borrowing of funds.
So moved. Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Seitz. Any questions or comments? Ms. Lloyd?
I think option 1 is the better of the two, but I'm actually I'm gonna vote no because I'm not really ready to make that much of
Okay.
a commitment today. I'd rather wait until the next meeting.
Very fair. Fair enough.
Mhm.
Counselor Vice President Wilson?
I had just a quick question. So we'll be taking 700,000 out of the electric fund every year to cover debt services. So my question is, you know, if we had a magic wand and we had money in the electric fund, could we pay extra against the principal? Does that again cut back the length of the loan even lower than 20 and give us a savings of more for
It
debt
does.
services?
So-
It does.
So then going back to the reason we have this in two steps, there was a couple different reasons. The one I didn't mention was when you borrow 10 million or less in a calendar year, okay, you get what's called a 5-year call feature, which is a short amount of time to refinance or pay off the debt. If you borrow $10,100,000, it takes between 8 and 10 years in order to be able to either refinance or pay off the debt. So by splitting this into 2, you'll have a 5-year call feature on both
Oh,
borrowings,
interesting.
which allows you to do things like
Do
that
just that.
sooner.
To both chunks of money because that's
Yeah, instead of
interesting.
waiting, 8 years.
Yes, yeah.
So if rates are lower 5 years from now, you could take $1 million, pay off some of it, and we could refinance it. Or if
Sweet.
Right,
rates are higher, you just do nothing, and you can pay it off, or
Right.
it leaves you flexible.
good, thank you.
Good to know. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Motion carries with 1 no.
So maybe John can quick hit on the ordinance, just so you know what's coming.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you very much.
Again, John Cox with Eckert Siemens, work with Jim as your solicitor. My practice is focused on public finance. I'm a municipal bond lawyer. We've prepared a draft of the ordinance to give you plenty of time to review it in advance of considering it for enactment, either at your next meeting on June 20th or at your meeting on July 5th. So I'd like some direction from you this evening on that front. But the draft ordinance contains all of the requirements of state law, federal tax law, and federal securities law for the borough to issue tax-exempt obligations in a public offering that PFM would coordinate on your behalf. So, again, as Zach indicated, these are tax-exempt obligations, so the holders don't have to pay income tax on the interest income that they receive, which allows them to offer a lower rate to you. Authorizes all of the offering documents, so as you just approved, you authorize PFM to start preparing what we call the preliminary official statement, which has all of the relevant information, financial information of the borough, gives the investors an opportunity to review your credit. There's also, PFM will be coordinating a credit rating with the credit rating agencies. So they will review your finances as well. And then once the bonds are sold, as Zach indicated, a price, then the current timeline, if you could scroll, yeah, DC. So based on the current timeline, we're looking at the second to last line item there, week of July 24th. Again, this is tentative, but this is our our game plan at this point. Week of July 24th would be when we sell the bonds and lock in the interest rates. We wouldn't actually close on or receive the funds for another month, but your interest rate would be locked at that date. Then we do a final official statement that gets posted onto a national website where all the other issuers in the Commonwealth and across the country post the final information for their bonds. So again, it's a maximum parameters ordinance, which we do for DCD purposes. It's the only action the council would need to take to authorize the issuance of the bonds. It does delegate and authorize the borough manager to accept the final terms, the final pricing as the two phases, for each of the two phases of the bonds. And then directs the council president or vice president to sign the final addendum, final terms for each bond issue. One thing I would mention, I know that you've been discussing this project, and actually I'm not sure, have you actually placed an order yet for the
Transformers?
Yeah.
I believe we just got, HRG just did some work on a transformer bid.
So what I would say is this doesn't actually commit you or obligate you. Enacting the ordinance itself doesn't actually commit you to moving forward with pricing and selling the bonds. But once we get the green light from the administration to move forward with this, regardless of whether you have actually bid or awarded bids for the project, at that point, you are committing to moving forward with the project. Because as Zach indicated, you can't pay off these bonds for at least 5 years. Right? So and I just say that because although you've been working on this project for a long time, and it doesn't appear to be controversial, by issuing the debt, issuing the bonds, you are committing to moving forward with the project. So I just want to make sure everyone understands.
And so that would be in July.
That's correct. Yep. So enacting the ordinance either on June 20th or July 5th, that allows us to file the necessary paperwork with DCD to authorize you to move forward with selling bonds. But the bonds will actually be sold at that point. The interest rates are locked and you're committed to closing, the end of August. But at that point, yes, you're committing to move forward with the project. Happy to answer any questions anyone has. Procedurally, the Debt Act has its own advertising requirements, which supersede the Borough Code advertising requirements. We have to do a advertisement at least 3 days in advance of enactment and then a second notice within 15 days after enactment, which we typically place the day after the ordinance is enacted. But we'll take care of that, placing those ads on your behalf. And again, the question is whether you want to authorize us to proceed with that advertisement for enactment on the 20th, or hold off and assume that it'll be considered for enactment on July 5th.
Anybody, or Councilor Lloyd, do you have a question or comment?
I did. Can you go back and repeat what you said about the borough manager and?
Sure. So
I need to
this
understand.
is the only action that official action that council will take to authorize the issuance of the bond, enacting this ordinance. So we have a draft. I think, Sal, you
Yeah, it's
sent
in
a
the
draft
packet.
around to everyone. So you had plenty of time to review it in advance of the 20th or the 5th. But in section 5-ish, I could open it up and look at it. It does authorize the. No, I've got it on my phone here. Section 4. So, section 4, essentially, council is authorizing the borough manager to direct the financial advisor on when to market the bonds, and also to approve the final pricing for the bonds. And then each final pricing sheet will be presented to the president or vice president for final signature. That's typically how the reason we do it that way is for several reasons, but primarily it's kind of any given Sunday. You have no idea what is going on in the market, in the bond market on any given day. So to pick an exact date and time to sell the bonds means that you may not be entering the market at the ideal time. So in terms of obtaining the lowest interest rates. So PFM will actually, as your fiduciary, this is what they do every day, they will actually determine the date and time in which to sell the bonds. And that may or may not coincide with a meeting of council. So in our view, in our experience, we've been selling bonds this way for 20 years. Providing that flexibility is better than setting a date and time on a date that you actually have a council meeting. So that's why we delegate that final, here's when you're going to enter the market, to the administration. Because you've already authorized the debt to be issued for this project. It's just at that point, you're relying on the financial advisor to get you the best.
And this isn't unique to Middletown, this is how we do every school district, county, city, authority, bond issue, pretty much around the state.
Does that answer your question? Do you have any? Okay.
I am gonna go on record to say that I don't like that process. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's very transparent, and although this may not be unique to Middletown, Middletown has had a lot of unique situations, and it just makes me slightly uncomfortable.
Any other questions or comments? Does anybody have anybody want to weigh in the 20th versus the 5th? For the
I would
guess-
like the 5th.
the 5th? Any other
I'd like to get it done as soon as possible.
20th?
Yes.
20th? 20th? Do we need to vote on this? Do you have a motion for it?
I do not. But part of the, is to advertise the ordinance was approved in the vote for that last motion.
Very
Yeah,
good.
but not the date, so you
Not
should
the
do a
date.
motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do I need to add a motion?
Yeah, let's add one real quick.
Okay.
Seeking,
would be-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's okay. A motion to approve PFM to advertise.
Well, actually, Eckert.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Eckert,
Sal,
I'm sorry.
A motion to authorize the advertisement of the ordinance for consideration on June 20th.
Okay, so a motion to approve Eckert Seaman to authorize the advertisement of the ordinance on June 20th, 2023 meeting.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Aye.
2 noes. Do you have any other questions? Anybody? We're good. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Agenda item number 4.
This would, Patty Gillingham, she's actually here this evening, to request the borough to co-sponsor the swim club, as well as write a letter of support for the Dauphin County Gaming Grant to help with repairs and maintenance.
We already did that.
We did agree to, write a letter of support, correct?
What happened was, first of all, thank you for hearing me again. When I was here on May 2nd, we talked about it, and even though I submitted a written presentation and a stamped letter, I did not say verbally to you as a group that we're requesting your sponsorship. It was kind of a busy meeting with the fire company, and I tried to summarize and, reduce my comments. So that was not clearly verbally said that day. But yes, we are asking for your sponsorship because we have significant maintenance to be done at the pool this year, sandblasting, and we painted, we caulked, painted. And also the epoxy paint costs more than initially I had presented. Instead of $4,000, it's $17,000.
Mhm.
And that's just covering low end to the 6 foot. And we also will need an electric panel or two. So we have increased our request from 25,000 to 35,000.
Mm.
I met with Dauphin County Economic and Development, Susan Yoakum, she was the solicitor, and she told me that if you sponsor more than one entity, it's not going to impact your other sponsorships. Because I think initially I understood that maybe your concern was, can you hear me? I'm sorry. Maybe the concern was if you sponsored more than one entity, then the fire department may not get their share. But that's not the case. She explained to me that it is one bucket of money. It's not like a bucket that goes to Middletown or a bucket that goes to Royalton.
Mm-hmm.
Every request is viewed on its own merits.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make that clear if you had any reservation about sponsoring 2 requests for sponsorship.
Thank you for following up on that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Can I give you any more detail, or do you have any more questions?
Does anybody have any questions? I'd like to make a few comments. Just for the record, I will be abstaining from any of these votes. The last week or two, I have been engaged with the pool, well, IEC has been engaged with the pool to help them work through some electrical issues. All my services I did donate, but some things did go through my company to help them.
Thank you.
And I've not
Thank you
received any
very
money
much.
from them, but just to be very clear, because I helped bring in another vendor and that will have to go through IEC. I'm just going to abstain, and that way it's clear. In their electrical panels, they noted, I did put them on notice that their electrical system is in severe, it's bad. I didn't give them any formal quotes, but I told them they should put it in their capital improvements plan and think about that in the next 3 to 5 years. But I just want to make it very clear that I'm abstaining, and this is why I'm abstaining, and so there's no questions or concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, you want me to read the motion? A motion to approve writing a letter of support and co-sponsor the Middletown Swim Club grant application to the Dauphin County Gaming Grant for funds to help with repair and maintenance of the Middletown Swim Club pool.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Kluskevich and second by Councilor Seitz. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? I abstain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and thank you for your electrical advice and expertise.
I'm glad you got the pool up and running. I know there for a couple days, it was round the clock on the phone.
I know. I've been there many, many weekends painting. It's a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could I give you my name and address to send the letter to me? Would that be possible? Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5.
This is in reference to, changing the zoning for the Grove property as Coldwater has requested. Motion to advertise ordinance 2023-1408 and send the zoning map and text amendment for rezoning of 453 Cedar Avenue, parcel number 42, 032, 001, 000, and 4 more zeros, and 447 East Main Street, parcel number 43, 043, 239, from residential to commercial lots to the Planning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Seitz. Any questions or comments? Madam Secretary?
Oh, I'm sorry. From residential R1 to commercial C1 lots to the Planning Commission.
Are you guys good with
I'll
that?
amend it, I'll accept the amendment.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? I abstain. Thank you. I abstain. Agenda item number 6.
This is a motion to advertise ordinance 2023-1406, amending Chapter 265, Civil Service Rules and Regulations, to provide Borough Council the discretion to waive Act 120 certification for police officer candidates.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 7.
This is a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-7, authorizing the disposal of equipment as listed on Exhibit A.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 8.
This is a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-8, authorizing the acceptance of the pole attachment agreement between Everstream Solutions LLC and the Borough of Middletown.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 9.
This is the Oak Hill Drive demolition. Motion to approve the retainer agreement with HRG in the amount of $26,000 for the bidding and construction oversight of the demolition of Vastine's building at 231 Oak Hill Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 10.
Motion to approve the retainer agreement with HRG in the amount of $25,000 for preparation of a conceptual master site plan for the community pool property at 400 South Union Street.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? Counselor Lloyd?
I know when they did this presentation before that they felt that any type of like splash pad wasn't feasible. But I don't, if we're gonna do this master site plan, and we're gonna involve the public, I feel that it should be an option. So I'm gonna vote no based off of this paragraph in here that says it is assumed that the conceptual designs will not include a major water feature, such as but not limited to a pool, misting pools, or splash pad. Any inclusion of these features will require additional field survey, which is not included in this scope of work.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Agenda item number 11.
Motion to adopt a utility service manual policy dated May 17th, 2023, outlining requirements of the borough's utility processes.
I just throw something in. I noticed we
have on the top of it, adopted by mayor and town council of,
Yeah,
we gotta just have the motion reflect that, would just say adopted by borough council,
on June
yeah, not town.
5th.
But, I mean, the rest of it's good,
Mhm.
substance is just.
Okay. So I'll reread it. Motion to adopt the utility service manual policy dated June 5th, 2023, outlining requirements of the borough's utility processes.
So move.
Second?
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 12.
Some reference to plantings at the square. Motion to approve up to $3,060 for purchase of plants from Warburton's Nursery for the revitalization of the square, with funding coming from the Town Beautification Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? I have a question. Why, we have a town beautification fund, why are we voting to
That's what I wondered.
spend the money? I mean, we don't vote.
Because I don't think it's specific for,
What we spent it on. Right.
right,
There wasn't a budgeted item for
for
that.
the plant.
There's not really a defined what that money is to be
Hmm.
utilized for. And since the square is a pretty visual point in town, I just wanted concurrence that
Okay.
this is what we wanted to do.
I just was curious, that's all. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 13.
motion to authorize the fund transfer of $48,116 acquired through municipal sales from pool cash to the Public Works Sinking Fund.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Wellenbecker. Any questions or comments on the funds? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Agenda item number 14.
So proposals were sent for the Labor Day fireworks to be held on Saturday, September 2nd, with the rain date of September 3rd, requesting 5,040 shells. We received proposals from two organizations. Sky Shooter proposed to do the event for 13,000, which was 5,478 shells, and we actually received three proposals from Bixler Pyrotechnics. One for the 11,100, which is what we typically pay, for 4,924 shells. One to meet the requested amount for 12,500 at 5,778 shells, and an expanded show for 16,000 for 7,738 shells. So the motion would be to award Bixler Pyrotechnics as the fireworks provider for the September 2nd, 2023 display as proposed for a total of 12,500, which meets the shell number, but it's a little more than what we've spent in the past.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference in shells from,
The
12 to 11.
difference of the shells, the amount that was requested was 5,040. The 11,100 gives us about 100 less shells than what we requested.
what do we normally, how many shells do we, we've never talked about shells before.
No,
I don't know.
and so I talked to Jim about this a little bit, and really, we're not, our request is about providing a service, not the number
Yeah,
of
so what I
shells.
explained to Sally was, apparently this was handled like a procurement, but we're not really buying shells. We're buying professional services of somebody to put on a show. So, kind of funny thing, the way that went out, if I understand it right, the proposals were all non-responsive to the specific
Yeah.
request. But the reality is, you could reject them all, negotiate or whatever, but, we're not, and Sally was thinking, I don't know if that's the reason, but it may be that they have these shells in groupings where, there's no feasible way to have exactly whatever we said. I don't know any of those details, but it's, we're really not buying, fireworks, we're buying a show. You can always do an RFP if you want to, and you did, but
Yeah,
we have nothing that's exactly responsive, but we're also statutorily not required to handle it as, like a bid.
I would vote I would vote to be in line with where we normally are with 11,000. Isn't that,
Where?
we're traditionally around the $10,000 range is where we traditionally spent?
No,
Around 11,
Okay.
yeah. Mayor, you've been doing this for a while. What would 100 less shells look like in the display?
It just would be greater spacing between, the way it is now, if something goes off and there's not a lot of time until the next one's going off, you start decreasing it.
Oh.
There's greater delay between.
Got it. So the length of the show might be the same, but more delay
I'm sure if you
between-
called Mike Bixler, or what was the first one? Sky
Yeah,
Shooter,
Sky Shooter.
it probably will cut the length a little bit.
They'll even cut the length a little bit.
And nobody has historic data of how many shells were in previous years?
I don't believe so. Well,
Around 5,000.
around 5,000.
In the 11,000 was how many shells?
4,924.
Not 24, it's 5,000. Any other input from people?
I hadn't thought of this, but the way to get people thinking about an event is a banner at the square. I'm not trying to add money, and if we do less shells, but I guess we could check with Carol. It would be nice to put a banner at the square advertising the Labor Day fireworks for the community. Because I wonder how people, like, I didn't know there's fireworks, I saw it on Facebook, if we're going to do it, if it is an event, then let's invite people and get people down there. If we're spending 11,000 or 12,000, then, let's get people turned out. Now, I know some people sit on their porch because you can see it. Can we check with Carol and see if there's?
We have to do a banner request with PennDOT, correct?
Yeah.
We don't have
with
to do banner?
Carol.
Oh, we already did a banner. Well, we have to, but we did it already. Is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm okay with a banner. I think
Yeah.
that's
That's the one that has hanging up.
Well, that those reservations fly. People. Thank you.
Does anybody have any input on the
Back to
11,
the cost of
the 11 to 12,000?
I don't remember, did we budget that amount in the budget, or what?
It's all dependent upon donations. Normally, the mayor brings in the amount he needs through donations, so it's not really a budget item.
Right.
Do we
No,
have
I know
any-
that's how it was done in the past, but I didn't know if there was a budgeted amount this year, that would determine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, how much do you think you can raise?
I know.
We've been successful.
Not to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah, I've been successful in the past with that. The COVID thing kind of hit the basketball game, which hurt us in terms of, and it's been tough getting that back. To me, the difference between 11.1 and 12.5, I think you'd have to stay in there. I don't think you're going to raise $16,000.
Right.
That difference there is not huge, so
Mm-hmm.
I think either one of those is probably attainable, but I don't think you're going to start pushing 13 to 16. I think that's asking a lot.
Yeah. I might lean into 11.
I'm leaning into 11 myself.
Just makes it easier, and
Less
it's still
stress
a
on the
lovely
mayor.
night. No one's going to say, "Wow, that was 100 less shells than last year." I'm not coming again. I don't
Make sure you
think.
put those exact words in the minutes, please.
Do we have a motion to approve the, what was it, 11?
Okay. Yeah.
11-1.
A motion to award Bixler Pyrotechnics as the fireworks provider for the September 2nd, 2023 display as proposed for a total of $11,100.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, seconded by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments on the shells? All in,
I have a question, not on the shells, but, where would the money come from if for some reason funds aren't raised? I mean, I know that he has, I'm looking at it right here, there's a balance in there now, but where would that money come from?
pool
Full
cash?
cash would be the only place it would come from.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the fireworks? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 15?
Motion to authorize council president to sign the lease agreement with Leaf Capital Funding LLC, which is DOCIO, for a 63-month lease agreement for equipment and copier maintenance.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Let's get those copies.
Brittany's Hope is doing their annual Biking for Brittany fundraiser for special needs children on Sunday, September 10th, 2023. They are requesting to use Hoffer Park as their rest stop as they did last year. They are expecting approximately 300 people to stop throughout the ride and are asking to rent Shelter 1 as well from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that includes setup and cleanup time.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to approve the special event request from Brittany's Hope for their Biking for Brittany's fundraising event on September 10th, 2023, for the use of the field in front of Hoffer Park along Mill Street and Hoffer Park, Shelter 1, from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Miller. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
I'm
go
sorry.
Go ahead.
May I ask, what is borough assistance on the top of the second page? It's hard to read, isn't it?
Part of the form. Grace said.
State road closures requires, oh, okay. Okay.
We can check it off if we want.
Part of the form, okay. She didn't ask for us.
No assistance.
No assistance, okay. You know, of course, this is a wonderful thing, and I will certainly vote to approve it. I wonder, though, for me, it raises the question we've said before, is it time for us to just review our rental costs for things? I don't know how long it's been, if it's been a while. I'm not suggesting we raise them. I'm just saying maybe it's time for a review. And I know this may not be wildly popular, but I wonder if it's also time to look at what the sports organizations donate towards us. Again, I'm not suggesting any action, but I just think it's always good to review. What would that take to look at all that together as a proposal, or those documents are already available?
I'm
Could we
sure
put that on
Ken
the-
and staff can put together a spread, like an Excel
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of spreadsheet of,
Of what
Could that
we've
be done
rented.
Yeah. Would you
or what
mind-
assets we have and what we're renting them out at.
Mhm.
So, can we have a master Excel spreadsheet of our assets that we have and what we rent them out at?
Well, Hoffer Park's the only park that gets rental.
But the ball fields have, the sports fields make a donation. I don't
Main
know
Street
clearly.
Gym, or MCSO building.
Doesn't that go through Mara now?
Yeah,
Yeah, that all.
Oh, that all goes through
Mara
Mara?
now.
Even the MCSO building?
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be a small Excel spreadsheet.
It still raises more topics to discuss. Thank you, Sally, for bringing that to staff attention.
Uh, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 17.
The fire department plans to apply for the Dauphin County Gaming Grant for the debt reduction of the pump truck and is asking the borough to co-sponsor them. Motion to co-sponsor the Middletown Volunteer Fire Department's grant application for debt reduction of the pumper truck to the Dauphin County Gaming Grant.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Seitz. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 18.
Motion to authorize the fund transfer of an additional $35,376.50 from the general fund pool cash into the fire department sinking fund, correcting the balance transfer from 2021 positive revenue balance.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 19, bucket truck.
So Greg had mentioned at the workshop the problems in purchasing vehicles in today's market and is requesting to purchase a bucket truck, which would have an estimated delivery in approximately 4 years. So the motion to authorize the purchase of one AT41M bucket truck through Alltech Industries, Inc., CoStar's number 025-E22-459, in the estimated amount of $285,596 to be funded through the electric sinking fund.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Counselor Seitz. Any questions or comments?
I just want to be clear that you said 4 years,
Ah,
correct?
I'm
Right, I know.
just want to make sure that I didn't.
No.
4 years.
I waited 2 years on a pickup truck. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 20.
Greg is requesting to purchase the same thing, 3.5 to 4 year delivery time. So the motion to authorize the purchase of a 47-foot digger derrick through Alltech Industries, Inc., CoStar's number 025-E22-459, in the estimated amount of $282,565 to be funded through electric sinking fund.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, second by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 21.
Royalton has requested an additional 6-month extension to the sewage treatment agreement with Veolia. Motion to adopt Resolution 2023-9, approving the temporary extension of the Royalton sewage treatment agreement until December 31st, 2024.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Counselor Kluskevich, seconded by Vice President Willenbecker. Any questions or comments on the sewer agreement extension? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 22. Sally, you're up.
I am. Okay, on Ken's report, we've already gone over number 1. Number 2 is that staff received a letter from Verizon that the cable franchise agreement is up for renewal December 1st, 2025, and wishes to restart renewal proceedings. Cohen Law Group handled the agreement at the last renewal. Manager contacted CapCog to see if they are pulling together a consortium of municipalities to handle these renewals.
Oh, interesting.
Next one.
Yeah, go.
HRG has finalized the lot add-on for the Oak Hills Spruce Street substation properties, and it will be going to the Tri-County Planning Commission as well as our Planning Commission for review. Number 4 is about the fireworks. And the gaming grant is number 5. Number 6 was the swim club. And that's it on
Man, we're gonna let you do his reports more often.
his.
Agenda item number 23, codes.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jason.
All right, just to kick off here quickly, we are slowing down with the grass at this moment because of the lack of rain. However, once rain picks up, it becomes one of those issues of trying to get people to keep up with it. Vacant properties are the most difficult because they aren't there. They're either out of state or not in the town of Middletown. So what we've been doing is trying to get a hold of the phone numbers, contact them, mail, disperse that. So it takes months in some cases before something even occurs. There have been some complaints of certain properties of not being done, but I assure you that we have been aware, and we are working on them. They just don't always happen immediately. Those who do comply makes our job a lot easier. So just giving you those forewarnings. We do have contractors through Middletown that will mow them if we absolutely have to go that route, and then they get billed those payments back to the borough. If they do not pay for those, then we have to go through the whole process of putting liens onto those properties. So again, a long process. The second thing here is that I propose language to or include transient fees or tax and zoning to limit transient rentals within Middletown. We have complaints of parking in various areas. Houses in Middletown are being sold by transient rental companies.
Define this.
Defined.
What do you mean by transient?
Airbnbs, rentals that go in and out on a day-to-day or weekend basis. So, I would like to see some language put into place to put either penalties on this or a tax that benefits Middletown for those types of companies.
Huh.
I actually, I don't agree with this assumption. I have a property outside of the borough that I let a tenant Airbnb the whole building, and it works out phenomenal. But as far as parking goes, there's always parking, because when somebody lives there, they have family, they have friends, they have kids. A tenant that occupies a building all the time will have more cars than somebody that's coming in out of town for a very short period. And I noticed a huge impact on my properties with parking becoming more abundant with the Airbnb method. And from a landlord's perspective, my properties have never been taken care of as well as they have been now, because it's a business. And no business, if you are Airbnb-ing your property out or letting somebody Airbnb your property out, that's their business and that's their livelihood, and they're treating it almost like a hotel. It's always kept clean, because are you going to go to an Airbnb and walk in if there's food on the floor and holes in the wall and doors ripped off the hinges? You're not going to rent that. You're not going to pay your money for it. So I actually strongly disagree with writing language that would prohibit transient rentals. I think it's actually quite opposite of what you're referring to.
And maybe I misunderstood, but I thought what you were saying is proposing like some type of a tax or something, which to what you're saying, which I agree with, is a great idea, because like when you go to a hotel or stay at an Airbnb, there's always taxes included. So if these are popping up in town, then
Right.
there should be some kind of a tax, because
I thought you said prohibit it. I'm sorry, because you kind of spun it off saying we need to
I said
prohibit.
proposed language to include transient fees or tax.
Fees or taxes.
yeah, he's saying if
Not prohibit.
no.
If I said
Proposed
prohibit,
taxing.
that's
Okay,
not what.
maybe I misunderstood you. I'm trying to get people to comply. I don't know how you get people to comply with that, but that's.
Yeah, it would have
Jason, what's your experience with this? I mean, or what are you hearing or thinking?
Well, we're getting complaints on a monthly basis, at least a handful a month. of parking being of prime premium, and that's being taken up by these transit rentals. Mainly because extended families are coming and multiple cars are going to that, and then they are parking there alongside of the streets. For example, we have one-ways, I'm not gonna mention particulars, but we have a one-way, and the parking is full, and when you have the transients with multiple cars on there, that's taking the residents' parking spaces. And they have every right because it's on a township road,
Street.
but it's just a concern that residents in those areas have. And we're noting that. So I
Interesting.
figured if there was a way to propose something to benefit the town, or if there's language to keep parking with parking lines or something like that, so that people aren't double parking or something like that, that's
You're saying paint lines on public roads?
on the side street as parking spaces. I'm just trying to
Just
come up
thinking
with
out
ideas
loud,
to
yeah.
organize
Yeah.
the parking arrangements.
Jason, where are you seeing properties becoming Airbnbs around town? Is there a certain
There's one
neighborhood?
on Main Street, there's a couple on Roosevelt, there's a couple on Plain. There's more.
Huh.
Ann Street, yes, Ann Street. They're peppered in all areas of Middletown.
Yeah.
And they're growing as we speak.
Isn't that interesting?
So, I mean, you know that they're Airbnbs, not just
I
like,
looked them up.
okay,
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
So have you come across that yet?
So I will say, in a lot of municipalities we represent, they have robustly regulated
It has to be.
short-term rentals, usually through the zoning ordinance. I have not seen taxes, and for tax, we always have to look at enabling, we gotta find a statute that allows us to tax, so I know like the county has hotel taxes and things, I don't think they captured. I'd have to look, I can't say as we sit here, we're allowed to tax
Mm-hmm.
that. We have to find, you know, in the local tax enabling statute or another enabling act where we're allowed to do it. So I just can't, you know, can't say for sure we're allowed to tax them.
That'd be
But
interesting
if
to
we
know.
can, that is an interesting piece.
I mean, well, how many, you looked them up? I bet there's less than a dozen
15.
Airbnb. Okay, I was gonna say dozen.
That I'm aware of, yeah.
So what do you really,
Airbnbs.
what are you really gonna gain off of?
Well, honestly, this is a growing rental town.
Right.
Less owners are staying, and you're gonna get more of this or long-term rentals. So it's either live with it and benefit with what it is, or be a shove and say no to it.
Yeah, but if you say no to it,
Hold
they're
on.
gonna do it anyway.
Right.
Well, if you,
That's,
Director
in my
Ryan.
opinion, that's a mute point. Why try to, like, prohibit them, because they're gonna do it.
I know a guy in Hershey, he bought a place in Hershey specifically to do it. They shut him down right away. Cause he put it up, boom, they had somebody looking, boom, he was gone.
Yeah, so
Couldn't do it.
most municipalities, in fact, arguably, every municipality has to have some zones where you can do it, or it's improper exclusionary zoning if you say nobody can do it. On the other hand, you know, some of them say it is akin to a hotel motel, so in a district where you can do that, you can do that. You know, single-family residential, you can't do it.
So-
They make those policy decisions in the zoning scheme.
Main Street is commercial.
Commercial. If we don't have transient language, however, it does have motels, hotels, which I could group that in there with my own interpretation of that. However, we have R1 districts that don't allow any of that stuff, and that's where the Airbnbs are. We could technically shut them down because it's not permitted use. However, we also need to have penalties with those to do that. So either we install penalties and shut them down as various districts, we embrace it and see if we can tax it.
Right.
There's various options that I bring to you to discuss.
The problem is, going back to parking, Dan, give me 1 second. Going back to parking, somebody's gonna occupy that space. Whether it's a family that moves in with 2, 3 kids, 3, 4 cars, mom, dad, and blah, blah, yada, 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 or an Airbnb, somebody's gonna be parking there. Globally, I think our big problem isn't 15 Airbnbs, it's parking. I mean, if you really want to get to the root of the cause, our town isn't falling apart over 15 Airbnbs. It's lack of parking.
There's also complaints, and maybe Dan will attribute to this, of people going in and out and the noise and the disturbance and all that stuff. They just don't have the respect. I'm not saying that in overall, but they just don't have the respect of where they are, as opposed to they're on vacation, they're going to play music, they're going to go in and out, they're going to do whatever they want to do. So.
Which I find that interesting because to what you were saying, like, anytime that I've stayed at an Airbnb, like, their rules are really strict
Yeah.
about noise and violations, so I'm surprised that, I mean, maybe it's.
Yeah, to that point, and Council Lord's point, I think if there is a noise disturbance, the owner is supposed to be called, not the people in there. It's the owner's responsibility, you know.
Yes, and in this case, I'm not saying this is all 15 of them, but I guess the owners of this one particular property that I've had a handful of calls just rent out to anybody and everybody and don't have the rules in place
Right.
that they should be putting.
Right.
So we could even put that in to ensure that these
Yeah.
people enforce these types of things out of respect of area residents.
Go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say. I think, like, people that are doing Airbnbs will probably be less respectful to the people that are the neighbors. I think if you have a long-term rental, and somebody's having a parking issue, you can probably go over and have a decent conversation with them and say, hey, you know, let's do this, you know. Whereas an Airbnb, you're probably gonna get nowhere. It's probably gonna just be, go back over there, forget it. You're not gonna win the battle.
I think I'm putting the shoe on the other foot. If I was going, and I don't Airbnb anything for the record. If I was going to Airbnb something, if I'm providing a place with very limited parking, I mean, maybe the homeowner, the Middletown resident gets that parking spot. Now the Airbnb person, you know what I mean? So like, shoe goes on both foots. It's not like there's a spot there and that's always going to be occupied by an Airbnb person. And I think as a homeowner or a business owner, you should be, you know, if you don't have adequate parking, you really shouldn't be, you know, putting your property up like that, in my opinion, in my business perspective.
Mr. Reddinger, most people that have rental properties don't even understand basic cash flow. You want them to understand parking.
Maybe I'm asking a lot.
That's no disrespect to you. That's just, they don't understand cash flow.
It's a discussion. I think it's definitely worth being talked about. What we can do or what we should do is, I don't know, up to debate, I guess. Director Wright, what was your?
The police haven't experienced any issues with this, but I've done a little bit of talking with other colleagues and doing some research in other areas, and the biggest issue is people are changing their vacation home model, and the idea of somebody coming to Hershey, or coming to this area and staying on East Roosevelt in Middletown to go to Hershey, and having 3 family members from all over the state coming in is a reality, and that can have an impact on a residential area. Imagine like the Outer Banks. We've all been to the Outer Banks, and there's 5 cars in the driveway and 10 bikes. You know, that can have an impact on a neighborhood that's not designed for vacation rentals. Not suggesting we ban them or tax them, but depending on where it is having an impact on neighborhoods. Not saying that's happening
Right.
in another. I think Hershey is very strict on it because it has, 2 blocks off
Oh,
the main
yeah.
drag. You can just get a regular old house, and there's 10 people staying in it. And I think they had some negative impact on it.
Hershey also has a lot to answer to as far as corporations with hotels that it's taking business from as well.
Don't we have a parking requirement for rentals?
Now, so for student housing, there's certain specific
Student
ones.
housing, that's
Student
what it
housing had certain parking requirements if they're, over a certain size and that.
For the same
But-
issue, just so many cars.
I mean,
coming.
generally, we don't have, you know.
It was student housing.
Public
Hmm.
street parking generally is. We'll say the municipalities we have that, you know, have really gotten into looking at it, so they knows they're usually not overly concerned about or focused on parking. You know, they're looking more at the behavioral things and the, you know, lots of other aspects, but they don't have as tight a parking as you guys either, so.
Is there any chance that you could share some of the rules and things that the other municipalities have done, that we could look at those and see if
Yeah.
any of those would fit
Maybe
here?
we could circulate
In fact,
that.
one of our,
It's a good idea.
one of my associates just recently did a seminar on it, so she has, share the PowerPoint and give you some examples of some of the ones that are out there, things they look at, you know, and they have different focuses too. Some of them are a little concerned about, you know, are these really safe? Do they have fire, you know, is there, you know, depends what your focus is on, but, you know, there are some that are trying to keep them out of certain kinds of neighborhoods. And there's some that are concerned about not really, you know, when you think vacationers, but they're really looking at, are there a whole bunch of temporary workers coming in for the warehouses? Are there now suddenly single-family homes that are really like
Oh.
a dormitory? So there are, it's funny, we all think in terms of Airbnb and somebody going on vacation, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the concerns in Central PA right now are looking at, you know, a whole different mold going on.
Hmm.
But, you know, we do have major tourist things here with, I mean, this is right by Hershey, right by Gettysburg, state capitol. There is a lot in this area, so.
Hmm.
But you have the whole spectrum of, you know, municipalities that say, we don't want to regulate these, and some that say, you know, we want to limit them very much to treat them like hotels and motels, and they're only allowed in those districts.
Thank you for at least starting the conversation.
Yep. The next one, propose to set a standard day, time per month for zoning hearing board meetings. It's very difficult to schedule and plan without anticipating a set schedule today. So whether that be the first Monday or the first Thursday or the third Thursday or whatever it is, that's what it is for each month. And if we don't have something, it goes to the next month. That way we're not
Yeah.
jumbling through
Yeah.
the weeks and days and times. So that would be ideal for us in planning.
Is there a recommendation for a,
I don't really have a day in per se. I know Tuesdays wouldn't be ideal because of council meetings and stuff, but probably a Thursday might be a day that,
Thursdays are HRC meetings,
oh, okay,
first and third.
all right.
Am I right, Grace?
Mr. Still, maybe you and Fudge could present us with some dates and times that would work on your end?
What do you say?
pardon?
He doesn't want to do it.
Mr. Still doesn't want to schedule.
He doesn't agree with it.
Who makes the schedule?
Is there a reason, Jack? Can you tell us?
Scoring for high school football stuff. Bud's got a part-time job that he does cooking and catering for Hershey over the Giants Center. So we always work in between those.
Very appropriate.
I think if you had a set schedule, I mean, we all have a set schedule and we coordinate our
Yeah.
lives around
The
the first and third Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually find if my phone rang every other day and it was like, oh, we're going to meet this day, it'd be quite frank, it'd be a shit show.
Couldn't you even just schedule one every 2 months? I mean, you're not that busy.
So there are, one thing to realize, there are, in the MPC, the statute, there are deadlines for you must have the first hearing within X days after.
So,
Now, they're fairly long, they're not,
Oh.
because you have to advertise and all that stuff, so they're not crazy short or anything, but you know, there is some, you know, you couldn't do it like, oh, we'll do them once a quarter, or, you know, every 2 months. At least would have to have them running monthly, just to meet those
Oh.
requirements. And I assume there are some months there aren't even any.
There are, yes.
We've had one, we will have one tomorrow, or.
Right.
Wednesday,
On the
Once a
7th.
year so far.
Yeah. Yeah, we were going back and forth with the times, trying to get this date within the time frame that the MPC allows. us,
Okay.
Which can become an issue if there's no availability.
Hmm.
They could,
I think to Ian's point, you make a day and, cause Fudge or whoever can work their work schedule around that.
Yeah.
I think, you make one day and that's it.
I
But-
think you should get some input though, also from the solicitor, Stan.
Yes.
The zoning hearing board is their own body. We make our own schedules.
Not necessarily, you're independent in adjudicating decisions, but, for example, if you said, oh, we're using this room on council night, you're not using this room on council night. You're not going out and renting a building or something, but, yeah, I think, council would try to respect what the zoning hearing board, wants to do, needs to do, et cetera, but it isn't, doesn't preempt council's schedule generally.
Well, our thought was, you can pick a day, and if nobody shows up, oh well.
Then perhaps you don't want to serve on it. I mean, that's a little selfish, I think.
I'm not the problem, I'm retired.
Well,
I don't have a part-time job.
I don't know what to say then.
Uh-huh.
If they can't abide by the schedule, then they can't abide by the schedule. Then somebody else should take the spot.
On another note, I can't guarantee this, but if there was a set day and time, somebody that may be interested would see that and can say, I am free that day, where it's a free-for-all. They don't know when their kid's schedule is going to be or their work schedule is going to be. So they can't commit to anything if there's nothing
Mhm.
committed in a date.
Right. Right.
That's my take.
But I do think you should get information coordinated through the solicitor. If folks in their world have scheduling issues, that ought to be taken into account.
There are other municipalities that have ordinances, correct, that give dates and times? Is
Yeah,
that
some
with
do,
the-
some do, and some have very robust, every month they have many,
Mm-hmm.
variance hearings.
And that's with input of their zoning solicitor, or just on council itself?
Yeah, so, I don't know if there's any universal out there. I mean, there are certainly a lot of municipalities that schedule as needed, and they coordinate dates. So one of the other things that will happen is hearings don't always end in one hearing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's a right, the municipality can say, we want a second hearing, put it on our side of the case. And everybody normally cooperatively, says, here's our schedules. Now, by doing that, you actually have to announce that next hearing on the record before you close it, or else you'd have to re-advertise. If you have, if you're a municipality that has a lot of them, there's a beauty to having the date set, because then you could literally advertise at the beginning of the year and not have to advertise each time you change, although you still have to advertise the specific case, so I don't really know that it gets you too far, but I think it's worth hearing, let the solicitor collect the, thoughts and concerns and present them, because there may be, if you go 3 months without a hearing, it may not be as critical. And I understand your frustration, though, trying to herd all the cats.
And summer is usually the biggest time period. So
Yeah.
starting this month all the way through September, you potentially could have one every month.
If you look at your own old zoning applications, we used to have a set date.
All right. So yeah, I'll discuss it with the zoning solicitor as well, but wanted to bring this to your attention as well. The Amtrak, I contacted the district manager. This is now obsolete, and because there's an update as of Friday, they are going to close this unless we take over the maintenance. And that I don't believe we're going to do that. They
Wait, did
argued
you
that
say?
That underpass.
they are going to close that permanently.
Unless what?
Catherine Street underpass.
I understand
Unless
that.
we take it over.
Unless we take it over. So, they argued that they have access to the Wood Street sidewalk and they have access to the Union Street sidewalk to get to the central area of this focal point being maybe Carnes, Borough Hall, you name it, library. So that was their argument. It was given to various, I don't think it was given to every council member, but it was on Friday. They gave me that update for that. And we can discuss that more down the road as well. Any questions on that?
Does anybody have any interest in maintaining that walkway?
And we have not had anybody call saying, hey, why is this closed? When is it going to open? Nothing. So, and it's been over a month at least at this point. The Planning Commission recommended approval on the condition it meets Dauphin County Planning Commission for the borough to combine two properties known as 231 Oak Hill Drive, formerly Vastine's parcel, number 42016-041 and 540 Spruce Street, the Spruce Street Electric Substation, parcel number 42015-001. I recommend to put that on the agenda to move that forward.
I saw the one comment was saying go back and check the approval from years ago on the other parcel zoning. Was that been done?
Not.
So there was a comment in the Dauphin County comments that sounded like it was, utility facilities are by special exception and someone should check, even though they're being combined, you know, they suggested you could latch onto the old one.
Okay.
But just to see historically, you know, what the obviously the substation's a non-conforming use
Right.
if it isn't, but, you know, they raised a comment, I didn't know if we had
Okay.
pulled that.
I'll have that checked into.
If we can even find it, I mean, I don't know what date it goes back to, and it might be, you know, you just determine it's not feasible to find that out.
Okay.
By what means is that underpass going to be closed off?
I believe they're going to cement that, and close that permanently. And then it'll just be an existing fence at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
Anybody have any questions for Jason?
All right, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Jason, if you ever have a way to think how we can lift up those people who do comply with codes, you know,
Yes, well, I
like a
thank them,
sticker, I voted, I complied with codes, anything, I mean,
I thank them profusely for being
Yeah.
proactive and for doing this.
I know it. It's just, you know, people aren't always willing to do the right thing, and I don't, a yard sign, we thank this owner for complying with codes. Whatever, you could have my stipend to do that, Yeah.
Yep.
Let me know.
Yep.
Mr. Redding, one thing we did back maybe 10 years ago is we did a house of the quarter that recognized a well-maintained groomed house. And realtors actually liked that. They said that it actually increased supposedly the property value by $2,500.
Really?
So maybe,
Wow.
because they could see to put that in the
Yeah,
notes
there's
or whatever.
something there about,
So
yeah.
we could, and at that time, there was like a little yard stake that went with it.
Well, we've done stuff like this for commercial buildings, like recently in the past.
Something to think about.
Yeah, I like it. Agenda item number 24, electric. Will's box not here. Is,
No, does anybody have any questions on his report? I can try to.
I don't. Anybody else have any
Mm-mm.
questions for Will's box report? Okay. Sally, agenda item number 25. What do you got?
If there are no questions on my report, I just have one additional item that I wanted to add, is that our auditors will be here on June 20th to present the 2022 audit.
Nice.
Okay.
You have anything else? Go ahead.
Did you hear from the county on that tax thing? The mispayment of tax?
No, Vince said he was gonna check with his solicitor,
Okay.
and he would get
I
back
just
to
want to
me.
make sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah, I sent him an email. Did,
Okay.
I copied you on it?
Yes, I
believe.
saw that, and I assumed by now we would have heard them.
No.
Okay.
Number 26, fire department. I don't think we had the fire department as the liaison have anything to report in regards to the fire. Report on? Excellent.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 27, highway.
Good evening.
Just to be quick, does anyone have any questions on any of the reports that I had submitted?
No?
One quick thing, the school district did have an incident with some yellow paint today on Race Street. We went out and we weren't able to get it cleaned up before it dried on the roadways, so, most of Race Street will be repaved at some point this year by UGI, but if you go out, there's a bunch of yellow paint between Maine and Conawago. They didn't quite hit the center line, so it doesn't look like a nice double yellow line.
You
but-
said this was a school district?
Yeah.
I'll send them a bill.
Well, we didn't, it's there. I have nothing to bill for, it's on the road.
Repave the road?
That may get us in a pickle if we try and bill them that much. So, it'll get ground off, or it will wear off, one or the other, so. Those unfortunate things that happens. So,
Do you know, what is UGI doing on Witherspoon Avenue? Do you know? Is it UGI or is it someone else? Because it was marked UGI.
they were doing some service and main work down there. I can check to see, that's right by, the sign shop.
The sign shop. What's the sign shop?
By,
What used to be Henderson.
yeah, by Henderson Tarp.
Oh, yeah.
The pool.
That's a sign, oh, I didn't know that. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Is it, in rough shape, or,
No, it's just marked.
oh, okay.
I actually was told it was in rough shape, like
Okay.
in the alley back by the church. Someone
Okay,
told me.
I'll check it. I'll check it tomorrow morning and let them know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they did anything yet. It looks like they're gonna do something. But speaking
They-
of that,
Go ahead.
sorry, if you could check and find out what they're doing and when it's gonna start. There are still, this is probably more for, Greg, but there's still an issue with some of the work that was done with the paving by, like, not Suez, but the contractor that they used. I forget the name now. I have the
Ace?
from the guy.
Is it?
No, there was someone else that, well, where they did on Pine Street,
Okay.
like the repair work that they did is not that great. And I don't understand if we put this ordinance in place, why it's not, like some of it I know, they cold patched, but shouldn't they be now out, like, repatching it?
Yes, was it, is it on Pine Street? Okay.
And I don't think it's just Pine Street. I think there's other areas, which if you would like me to send you a
Is
list.
it the Upper Pine Street up near Plain?
No, well, maybe, but
And
no, this is
Aspen?
down more in my area, but
Okay.
down heading towards, Maine.
Okay, I will check and see. It could be part of the project that they had going on up there where, their contractor came in and they were going to knock out a project, and then I believe they ran into difficulty obtaining an easement from a resident, so the contractor and Veolia kind of patched up the job and went away until they solved their easement issue. But I will check with Ms. Webb at Veolia.
How they doing with their easement issues?
No idea. That's between them and the property owner.
But yeah, that could be part of that project, but I will check with Veolia and, take a look out there myself. And if they need to, yeah, they can get hot mix now. So if they've had a delay in the project, they can restore the street. We'll get it buttoned up.
We talked about that, didn't we?
Yes,
I thought so.
yes. UGI did come in and do some completion on their project from last year. They're going to have a different contractor come in and finish Ray Street, but they did water, about 2 weeks ago. So they did button up some of their areas as well. So they're working on getting their final restoration done. UGI submitted in the last month, I'm gonna say about 12 permits for, restating gas services throughout town. With the cost of things get all wonky, people are converting over to gas. One of the issues with gas is, when someone discontinues service, they dig the street up to cap it at the main. When they restore service, they dig it back up at the main to undo it. So you get a multitude of holes each time someone switches back and forth between, different heating sources. So we are working with them to ensure they do their patches correctly.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Miller?
Just to say that, as you know, this Thursday at 4 o'clock is the last meeting that council staff has with HRG for the PROS document, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Green Spaces. So it's a draft proposal, and Matt will be there.
Yes.
Yay, okay.
Yes, I was addressing some of Caitlin's concerns. She
Okay.
had sent me a few other questions, so I'm pulling those items together. And I like your suggestion. I'd rather see the plan ahead of time rather than try and delve through it while we're sitting there, because I'm sure it's an expansive plan.
Not getting a lot of traction, but of course Jenny and Counselor Miller and Counselor Kliskevich and I have been working with staff on that for the last number of months, so we'll be bringing that forth this summer.
Yes.
For council review, yeah,
Yes, I'm excited to see it. I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how it plays out.
yeah,
M3T has been continuing to work on our cameras. You'll see cameras popping up here. You'll see they installed some of the door card readers today. So we are moving forward with that. They still do not have all of the equipment to run the server side of it yet. And they are awaiting materials for down at Hoffer Park to install the rest of the cameras and the license plate reader down there.
okay.
So we are moving forward.
Thank you for the update.
You're very welcome. Anything else
Matt.
from anybody?
No.
All right,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you.
Agenda item number 28, Director Wright.
He keeps putting me last on the agenda, but that's okay, I don't mind.
Oh,
I
boy.
won't take it personally.
We better rotate the staff reports.
Thanks, Grace. All right, so PD staffing update, we currently have 3 open positions. We have 1 young man who's in the academy who will graduate on July 14th.
Oh,
He will be taking a much needed week off and will start the following Monday.
yay.
I'll make sure we can get him in here for a swearing in if possible during the council meeting. If not, we'll arrange it when it's available for the mayor. He's a good guy. He's a young man, and he has no qualms about saying someday he wants to be a chief of police. So I'm not
Watch
sure
your
if
back.
that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he definitely wants to work. I appreciate council and the mayor taking the time to recognize Officer Schmidt tonight. It means a lot to me, it means a lot to him, and it means a lot to the police department. I don't want things like that to happen, to have us come in here and do things, but I think it's important we recognize, like the mayor said tonight, in today's climate, it's important to recognize when guys do go above and beyond, not just do their job, but go above and beyond.
Right.
So I promise I won't bring anything in here that's just people doing their job.
It's okay.
Okay? Thank you very much.
We're glad to.
On the vehicle front, we did a last minute purchase order last fall for 2 new police vehicles. I contacted the dealer and he actually said we're on the list for 2 or 3 weeks from now, not 2 or 3 years from now, like some of theirs. So if that is in fact true, you may see some financing issues on the agenda in the next coming months. So we can try to get those police cars put together. I have heard that some jurisdictions are struggling to get their cars. It looks like we're on the good list this time for that. And the last thing I want to talk about is Director of Public Works and I, Matt and I went down to Univar a couple weeks ago for a site visit, and went with their safety officer and their head of operations on a visit throughout the facility. It does house some pretty interesting and nasty stuff, but it looks like it's a very well-run and very safety-oriented organization. So that was at least good to see. If you don't know what they do, they buy large train cars worth of chemicals and put them into smaller containers and sell them to other parties. That's their primary business, but it's interesting.
Thanks for going down there. It goes on down there, and we sort of just let it go on down there. Yeah, yeah.
And they're open and about everything they do. We toured the entire facility. But it's definitely interesting, you know, things that are in your backyard that you just don't realize. But that's all I got.
I just have something to add to Dan's reports. I unfortunately have to ask that a letter of resignation be added to the agenda for the next meeting. We're going to lose Keegan Wenner. He's accepting another position. So we'll have to vote to accept that formally at the next meeting.
Yeah, Keegan's a good guy, and this was a difficult decision for him. He spent a lot of time with me talking about it. It has nothing to do with the borough, the police department, the leadership, the fellow officers, anything. He just has made a decision about his personal direction, and that's what he's going to do. So, yeah, he's a tough loss. Any loss is a tough loss.
Right.
But
right.
he's been here a pretty long time, and he's definitely invested personally in the outcomes of what occurs here. He's not one that, you know, clocks out and isn't concerned about Middletown. You know, so he's a tough loss.
It'll be a shame to see him leave.
So,
All right.
have that for the agenda next time.
Are you, this Carmody Avenue, are you doing?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good question. Director Miller did submit a request for a traffic study, so it'll actually give us directional, even just having the two rubber hoses out can give you directional amount of cars in a day, whether they're a truck based on their weight and those kind of issues. So we'll be able to at least have some additional data. I believe he has a concern, but this will actually provide us broad data. Is it 1 car a day? Is it 100 cars a day? That would certainly change how we try to address it.
Have you let Mr. McDermott know?
Did we contact him?
I have not, I've only had.
I didn't. I'll make sure I give him a call.
I actually thought he might be here tonight, just as a follow-up,
Right.
so I'm
We
sure
are
he.
holding off until, just because of the timing, we're holding off until school's back. in
Right.
session.
Same with the other study that it just doesn't make sense to do it now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll let him know. Thanks for reminding me.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 29, Viola joint venture. It's a shame they're not here to talk about their easement issues. They could be updating us. Agenda item number 30, council. Does council have anything they'd like to discuss? Topics to bring up? All right. At this time, do I have general public comment? Mr. Still, got anything? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? We will be going to executive session to discuss personnel and litigation. We will not be returning. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for what we did.
Good job.
I mean, it was a long time, but